What's going on, guys? It's me, Train Man, and welcome back to the area that we were working on before we handed off this map to Jader. Anyways, we have a little bit of terrain to finish, and we're going to wrap this up, and then we're going to head out and leave this area to, well, actually, we've got to touch up the edges of the river first, and then this area is going to be left to Jader and his treeing and farming. Although I could almost definitely do most of the treeing. That river is going to be the dividing line between the trees and the agricultural zones. And also, by the way, I will say, Jader, I encourage you to add like a little farm spurs off of my switches, although the one up here is not ideal, so maybe not. Maybe not in this area. I added a little mill spur up near Troy. You guys will get to see that towards the end of the episode. And I'm really not sure what I'm going to do with it yet. It doesn't have an industry there. It just sort of has a building and a track. So that goes for the area around the dam as well, which actually we can work on that next episode. Because now, the more I think about it, the more I want to do that area. Because if we work up from the south, we can get a better idea of the way everything's going to look coming into the gorge. I have a very amorphous idea of exactly what the terrain there is going to be. Because I know basically what I want to do with it. I know sort of what it's supposed to look like in the end. But the way it's currently set up would make making it like that kind of difficult. So I've got to sort of chip away at it to make sure my motivation keeps up, basically. When I come in here to do my 2 hours of time lapse every week, it's a sort of like, alright, what can I work on without getting too deep into a project? Because I'd like to be able to wrap some stuff neatly up by the end of an episode. And this is basically the one thing we get to do that with today. And the other being the niceties between Troy and Layton, which really I don't know the scope of yet, although I've started to set it up. We could use some decrease in terrain height to the south, because I feel like that's kind of what ought to be there. But I'm not sure if I want to create too much of a slope, considering the river flowing that direction is going to complicate the way things look. Anyways, so I had to do this in very small sections, and the reason being I was wrong about the vector originally, and of course I didn't expect to be right about it, but I was filling in and hoping that it wouldn't be too bad. But the more I got done with the longer stretches, the more I realized that things were going to be off. So I went and I sought out the actual slope vector, and I started more or less following it with these pieces of track here, which is why the area is fairly seamless now, now that we've figured everything out. Now that this is all set. And also I discovered this bridge. It was just, something written in presumably Russian at the bottom of the list of tracks, and I went, what is this? And then I realized, hey, I really like this bridge. So I might use that at some point in the future, although I don't know where. The Northern Passage, I guess is what we're going to call it, the old main, is going to be full of stone bridges and things like that. By the way, if we're going to talk about main lines for a minute, and bridges, the area that's the wonkiest currently in the map, and that would be the stretch of track between Layton and the summit, is, well, it's due for a rebuild more or less, because I don't really like how it turned out. Fortunately, it hasn't been on camera very much, although I showed it off for that run session. I think because in canon it is the third and final passage through the mountains here. It should be more or less impossible. And I don't mean impassable, I mean the track work should be the kind of thing where you look and go, wow, they shouldn't have built this here. Like, I want it to have deep cuts, I want it to have some crazy trestles, and probably a handful of tunnels, because right now we have exactly one tunnel on the map, and it's on the branch line. So, or well, it's not on our branch line. It's on, oh no, sorry, we have two now. We have one on Lee's line, and the other one on the secondary main line. I found that building and thought it was too cool to waste, so I put it over there. You'll see what I do with it in a minute. So we've got a 1-track tunnel on Lee's line, and we've got a 2-track tunnel on the other line, on the secondary main line. Alright, anyways, so here we go. We're covering this area with buildings, more or less. It's the sort of thing where I needed to make Troy bigger. Wasn't really sure how I wanted to do it. Just found a bunch of buildings and went, okay, well, this is fine. You know, one at a time, I would go through and I'd find something that I like, and I'd go, well, this is okay, or I'd find something that I didn't, and, you know, if I found something I particularly liked the look of, then I'd find a spot for it. I didn't find a spot and then decide, okay, we need a building here that fits. It was the other way around. So attaching up all the roads. There I got a very brief look at what the grid of streets looks like without any buildings on it, because the game decided not to render the buildings. And so here we go, blocking out this area a little bit more. So there we go. Click, 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 click. Everything's all together. And I think that's as far as I get with the road work. And then my next thing was I wanted to connect this mill to the road. And that wasn't particularly difficult, so I decided to build a road along the side of this railroad track here. Had to go find a bridge for it. And this probably took me the most amount of time for... excuse me. For a very small thing, it took me an inordinate amount of time to find a bridge that I actually liked. But I'm definitely going to come back to this bridge because I think it's really cool. It's not the kind of bridge that has a track built into it, so I have to lay the road on top of it, but that's really, you know, I've learned that it's a blessing in disguise when things are like that, except for tunnels. But, yeah, no, it's a blessing in disguise when bridges do that. I was hoping to find, like, a covered bridge or something, or, you know, I needed something really, aged, you know, something old. I had no idea what that was. That one blocked too much of the river. And then I found this one and went, hey, that looks pretty cool. So I was trying to connect them. That doesn't work. And then I just decided, okay, well, let's lay the road across the bridge like it's supposed to be. So, roads across the bridge. And that's, I think, as far as I get. And then I reconnect that, get rid of that. This is, you know, the first segment of construction ended. The second one came in with me undoing what I did at the last section. So I was trying to find a disused road, and I found a couple that I liked, but not any that I really fell in love with until I got to this just basically strip of gravel. And so, obviously you can tell that there was something bigger here before because of that bridge, but now it's just a gravel road. And I'll make that even more evident with what I do over here, which you'll see. That's going to go off that way, but it's not going to go off that way. It's just going to sort of run into bushes, and that's going to be the end of it. So I go ahead and build ourselves a little spur here that runs alongside. I draw it out a little bit more so it misses all the signals and the switch posts. And then I draw it over there, across there, and into the back of here. And that's probably all that's going to be there. I might add another spur. I might bring it out into a full-fledged industrial park, but I don't think that makes sense for the area. We've got enough stuff in Troy, and we've got stuff in the Troy Industrial Park as well. So we've got a little signal there, and that's going to be that. The next thing was the ground cover in Troy, which we've already established what the palette is, so I just had to go over, grab the correct colors, and place them in the correct locations. And that wasn't too difficult. It was just, well, I mean, it wasn't even monotonous anyways, because the city is so very different in its different corners. It's not like, you know, it isn't New York City where it's a solid grid, although it's fairly gridded. Now, I was trying to reflect that a little bit, but without going too overboard on a lot of things. I didn't really know, you know, I was building it organically. If there was something where, okay, I can add a road here, I'd add a road there. If it didn't feel like that was a good idea, I wouldn't, you know? It was actually more the situation of, once again, I'd find a building I liked, I'd find a building I liked, and then I'd find room for it, and then I'd put a road to it. So anyways, I was trying to look for a bunch of buildings and whatever, but I think I'm past the building point of it, and now the rest of the episode is more or less ground texturing. Now, if you'll notice, I put in, like, gravel underneath the foundations of the building, which makes sense in terms of color. I made asphalt underneath the roads, which doesn't change much except for the view from the map. And that's really what I was trying to get there. It's, I wanted to be able to see this gridded thing from the map as opposed to seeing... what's the word? As opposed to seeing just flat color. In a couple of sections of the map, you can actually see the trackage from when you're all the way zoomed out, and this should be the case. Alright, so I tried to connect this with a couple of methods, simply so that, for the sake of vehicles not disappearing when they reach the end of the road, I was trying to make sure that was basically the status quo. I don't like things disappearing, although now the road is halfway onto the regular road, although, to be honest, I've seen dirt roads that really infringe upon their neighboring asphalt streets. Asphalt. A-S-P-H-A-L-T. It's not. There's no ash in there. People pronounce it asphalt and they're wrong. It's asphalt. Anyways. So, I started to block this all out with the green and very quickly gave up on ignoring things like rivers. Avoiding things like rivers and the trackage that I'd already painted over and stuff. I just, that point right there was me giving in and going, well, whatever, I'll repaint it again myself later. If there's anything I've learned from Jader's handiwork very recently, it's that you can leave a very significant amount of space between the track and the forest. I'm not sure if I really intend to, but at the very least I'm gonna make it the option. So you guys will see what I mean by that in a second. When I'm putting down the Maple Beach birch, I'm leaving a lot more leeway than I normally would between the track and the trees. Alright, and that's when I realized, I better not go past here because I'm not sure what's going to be there. That's going to start to slope down. I'm not really sure what I'm going to do with the terrain going down that line, although, frankly, for a large period of time, I may just ignore it. Because like it and the area south of the dam, it's a very low priority thing. If somebody wants to tackle it, they can feel free. But it's not something I'm going to bother getting to until I'm decently far along with everything else. Unless I get, a serious amount of inspiration. I've got to make the gorge area look good enough, which is a project we need to return to. But for now I'm just sort of doing these ad hoc jobs all around the place. I've got to keep in mind what I've got to do is I've got to write some more of the Iron Horsemen Chronicles with Wybold, see what I have to get done for Christmas time, and then get it done. And I do know that one of the things I'm going to need is a snow version of the map, and I'm not really sure how to go about that, but I'm sure the replace texture will be my friend. Or, replace asset tool. Although then it won't be spun, I don't think. Or it might be. I don't know. I don't know how it calculates that. I was doing something there for a moment. Alright, there we go. So I'm using the same textures I was using in Troy, and I'm not sure how wise that was. I was tempted to go... If I recall correctly, in the other areas, when we did this, we didn't put this gravel texture on the edge, we just put down mud. And that was that. But anyways, the next stage is getting this all tree covered. I realize this area is or rather, it was uniform. It needs to be non-uniform, so that was one of the things I took care of real quick. Now, randomness is key. Randomness is omnipresent in nature. I mean, patterns are as well, but not quite so defined as patterns that we usually recognize. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you next week with 2 more hours of time-lapse and 15 minutes of video. Trayman out.